Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Wendy, and I am your worship associate today for the first half of this service. I'm joined by Reverend Sian Wiltshire, our minister, and Jacob Swetland, our director of music ministries. Woo! And Karen Magoon-Pearson, our Director of Religious Education for Children and Youth. We all welcome you this morning, and we would like to recognize the many volunteers who have helped put this service together today. It would not be happening without them. Thank you. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on the Ihichaman and Tongva land. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community bound together not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and compassion in our deeds and relationships, and we are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. To our roomers, we invite you to silence your cell phones. And for our Zoomers, we invite you to say hello in the chat. Good morning, Zoomers. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you will find it here. Later in the service, we will also have an opportunity for you to introduce yourself if you'd like to do so. So we begin worship with the lighting of our chalice. And this morning, I'd like to invite Jacob Swetland to light our chalice. It is his first day working with the choir, and he is the cat guardian of two lovely cats named Spaghetti and Meatball. I know, they're cute. He'll show you pictures. And also his mother's dog is also in his tribe. So we'll start in unison with saying, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. This we affirm together. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. Thank you. With that being said, let us rise in body and spirit and sing our first opening hymn. And two.
Joyful song. Well, as many of you know, I traveled to the Outer Hebridean islands this summer, and I have been wanting to talk about these concepts that I learned when I was there. So you're going to start off with a little bit of history in terms of understanding where a lot of this comes from. So in 1750 to about 1860, this is a time in Scotland that's known as the clearances, often the Highland clearances. This was a time when the crofters, which are kind of like, we might call them sharecroppers, or serfs even, they were forced off their land by the landowners, and many of them then were emigrated, left and came to the US or Canada or New Zealand, Australia. So our opening words is by a Scottish-American poet, and he captures what happened and what changed during that time. He wrote this: "The skies and the stones cry out from the scoured and wind-swept land, once home to Highland crofters, braw and free, who eked a simple life by strength of hand from Macaire and the Hebridean Sea. As clan and kin they lived and had their way, proud spawn of Viking, Gael, Pict, and Scot, till landed lairds and law swept them away, the Highlands cleared, the crofters left to rot. Their lives reduced to hunger and despair, their homes abandoned fell into decay. The wretched ruins of displaced lives laid bare. Black houses are what they are called today. In time, some did return, the wrongs made right, and the cottages that they rebuilt were white." The song that Phil is about to sing is famous in Scotland, and it's famous by those of Scottish descent. I am actually not of Scottish descent, but it's called Caledonia, which is the Latin word for Scotland. And it's sung in bars before they close down. It's sung at weddings, and it's very often sung at memorials. It's a song that invokes the Hebridean Scottish word that they called Cianalas, which is a sense of longing for a land for where you came from. And it's not always considered a very sad word, Cianalas, but one that invokes a sense of love for a place with deep meaning. Okay, so who here, when you were young, or maybe if you are already young, who here likes to visit their grandparents? Just when you were young, I loved visiting my grandmother. She had popsicles. That was awesome. Maybe an aunt, uncle. All right. Well, I want to tell you a true story about two Scottish youth named Millie and Sid who loved visiting their grandparents. This is a true story, as I said. Okay. Their mother was born in the town of Tulsta, which is way up there in those islands in the sea that you see off of Scotland there. Those are the Hebridean Islands. It's on the Isle of Lewis, the north town of northern Tulsta. And their mother, who, however, had married an Englishman, and they moved down to the town of Hitchin, which is just as like a suburb of London. Now, that's a long way to travel, especially back in 1949, which is almost 75 years ago. But their mother would take Millie and Sid to see their grandparents on the Isle of Lewis every summer. And they loved it there, especially Millie. They loved that their grandparents lived in a black house. This is a house where the livestock actually lives in one of the two rooms of the house, and they have dirt floors and everything. They love the smell of the peat that they would burn on the fire, and where their grandmother would boil them tea and cook their meals. They love milking the cows and fetching the water from the well. They love the open tundra and its heather and the lilies on the little lochen, the little lakes that were there, and of course swimming in the vast beaches. And especially Millie, she loved swimming. And girls back then really didn't go swimming, but Millie did. She would jump into that ice-cold water. And of course, they loved their grandparents. Sid recalled that his grandmother was always smiling and would make the most marvelous oat cakes and scones and herring for breakfast. Their grandfather would read to them at night under the oil lamp. So for Millie, her grandmother's place on this Isle of Lewis in Tulsta, she called it wild, free, and magical. In 1949, however, when Millie was 13 and Sid was 9, their mom told them that they couldn't go to their grandparents that summer. Boy, they were devastated, but especially Millie. and she made a plan. And on August 12th, 1949, when school was out in England for the summer, Millie told her brother that they were going on an adventure. She left a note for her parents, very kind of her, that said, "Gone on camping holiday, back in a few days." And Millie instead set off with just what's called a sixpence farthing, which like today would be like saying they had maybe 6 quarters in their pockets, a little bit of food, and of course the clothes that they were wearing. They were, however, they did plan for this, they had their swimsuits on underneath. Okay, so first they got a train to Hitchin, okay, from Hitchin to London, where they took an overnight train all the way up to Inverness. And from there they took a smaller train over to Kylev Lochane, where there's a ferry to the town of Stornoway. And then from there, they traveled north on a bus and arrived at their grandparents after 30 hours of traveling, going 700 miles. They were tired, hungry, and feeling a little sheepish. And their grandmother, who hadn't known that they were missing, actually immediately sent a telegram. That's, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like a text. So they sent a telegram to their parents telling them that the children were safe and were there. And the parents, of course, as soon as the parents found this note, they called the police, and there was a nationwide police search and alert that went out. But no one noticed these 2 children traveling on these trains and ferries. No one stopped them. They just assumed they were with somebody, right? No one asked for a ticket. There was one suspicious train inspector, and so they hid in the bathrooms on the train and escaped his notice. So, of course, all of this made the national news, and the 2 children became minor celebrities. Their parents let them stay there for 3 weeks when school was going to start in England, and the islanders were so delighted that they had traveled so far with so much passion and safely that they showered them with pocket money, so that when Sid and Millie did actually leave, they actually paid for their tickets on the way back. Now, for those of you out there, I had to wait 35 years to get to the Isle of Lewis and spend thousands of dollars and take 3 flights to get there, so no way can you sneak aboard anymore, all right? So this is a warning to any of you young ones out there who are thinking of sneaking off to your grandparents. Don't even think about it, all right? That's our story for today. Let us sing our children out with Karen Mugun Pearson, our Director of Religious Education. She'll light our children's chalice, and then we will sing our children out to the religious education classes. Is there any place that you would travel 700 miles, sneak on trains and ferries to go to? There are a few. Matthew's nodding his head, yeah. I've always had this strong intuition about places. Some of you have heard me talk about this, so that I knew that somehow I would go to that place, or I would know that I was somehow really important to me. So, for example, I remember a friend handed me a flyer of a fishing lodge that he had been at. He'd spent the summer at in Alaska. I was living at the time in Pennsylvania. And I remember looking at this brochure and going, I'm going to live there. I know I'm going to go there. And I didn't know. And sure enough, that following summer, I actually ended up going there. I worked there at that lodge. It changed my life. Another example, as some of you have heard me say, is that I knew that this was going to be the place where I would have my ministry. I remember I remember I had a strong intuition a little bit beforehand, but I was looking for that confirmation, that sense, intuitive sense, like this was going to be the place. And I remember walking down this pathway here when I was pre-candidating, and Tom was going on and on about how wonderful and all the things that we were going to do here and everything. And I just remember having this sort of goofy grin on my face going, I'm sold. I know I'm coming here. Okay. Like I just knew that this was going to be the place where I was going to be. And of course, it changed my life. But the first time I ever felt this kind of way, the place that I felt drawn to, that I felt connected, was Scotland, and in particular the Outer Hebrides, which was so far away from me. It was sort of a weird thing. Now, I'm not Scottish, as I mentioned. I don't think. I don't have my father's DNA, but I don't know if I might be Scottish. I don't think so, though. And I really didn't even know that much about Scotland at the time, but at the time I was in college at the University of Washington. As always throughout my whole life, I was curious about religion and spirituality, but I came from a family, right, that just completely were anti-religion. So it wasn't something I could really explore with them very well. And but I stumbled upon the words Celtic spirituality. And I remember thinking, well, I know what Celtic is, and I know what spirituality is, but I don't know how those go together. So I started doing some research about it, and I stumbled upon this book called the Carmina Gadelica. And it kind of changed my life. It's a collection of poems and stories and prayers and blessings, charms for curing, charms for keep yourself safe from the evil eye. It's this really interesting mixture of sort of Celtic paganism and Christianity. And it was collected by this guy named Alexander Carmichael. He was a Scotsman. He was also what's known as an exciseman, that is, he was a taxman who would go around to the various places and, collect taxes, basically. And he lived in the Outer Hebrides and also the Highlands of Scotland, which he kind of conflated as one, because both of them were very rural at the time. This was back in I think he started in 1870, and he published this in, I want to say 1910. So as he went around collecting taxes, he was actually this really nice guy. You think a tax collector would be really mean or whatever, but everybody loved him. It would seem that he was very nice, and he was kind of strict, and they did play a few jokes on him, it would seem. But they would hide things from him and stuff like that so that he wouldn't tax them too much. But they were very happy to talk to him about how they grew up with all of these charms and stories and hymns and prayers and blessings and everything. And he collected them. He knew that that era of paganism was coming to an end, and it was dying in these areas, and he wanted to collect them. So I delved into these very large volumes. There are about 2 of them, and they're about that thick, just so you know. And actually not all of his stuff has been actually printed, just so you know. It's at the University of Edinburgh. I became very fascinated with them because all of these blessings and prayers and poems, songs, everything, they reveal a people for whom everything was sacred. Everything was sacred. They had prayers, blessings for everything, okay? So Carmichael wrote in his introduction, he said, "Perhaps no people had a fuller ritual of song and story, of secular rite and religious ceremony than the Highlanders." Remember, he uses that for also the Hebrideans. "Mirth and music, song and dance, tale and poem pervades their lives as electricity pervades the air. Religion, pagan or Christian, or both combined, permeated everything, blending and shading into one another like the iridescent colors of the rainbow. These people were sympathetic and synthetic, unable to see and careless to know where the secular began and the religious ended. An admirable union of elements in life for those who have lived it so truly and intensely as the Celtic races everywhere have done, and none more truly or more intensely than the ill-understood and so-called illiterate Highlanders of Scotland." So they have prayers for and blessings and incantations for sleeping, lighting the fire, milking the cow, running the loom. They have charms to heal a sprain, There's a bursting vein, which always made me like, bursting vein, what is that about? Evil eyes, right? And for things that they consider mental illness, like envy, which I thought was kind of interesting. Here are some excerpts from some of those prayers, and I actually wrote them out for you. So this is one for kindling the fire. I will kindle my fire this morning in presence of the holy angels of heaven, in presence of Ariel of the loveliest form, in presence of Uriel of the myriad charms, without malice, without jealousy, without envy, without fear, without terror of anyone under the sun. So they would say this as they light their fire in the morning. And there's different variations on all of this. I love this one. This is for protection of cattle. Pastures smooth, long, and spreading, grassing meads beneath your feet, the friendship of God, the Son, to bring you home to the mountains, to the field of the fountains. Closed be every pit to you, smooth be every knoll to you, cozy every exposure to you beside the cold mountains. Isn't that lovely? Blessing your cows as they go off. This one is one of my favorites. I always thought this might be a really good one to do, like when you're shutting down your computer at work or something like that. This was a blessing of the loom. So they would, they wouldn't work on the Sabbath, right? They often have Saturday and Sunday off doing things. So they would shut down the loom. And so this one is, bless, O chief of generous chiefs, my loom and everything anear me. Bless me in my every action, make thou safe while I live. From every brownie and fairy woman, from every evil wish and sorrow, help me, O thou helping being, as long as I shall be in the land of the living. In the name of Mary, mild of deeds, in the name of Columba, just and potent, bless the four posts of my loom till I begin on Monday. Isn't that lovely? Kind of fun. So the Carmina Gadelica does paint this rather somewhat romantic picture of the life of the islands and of rural Scotland, one that was filled for worry for their livelihood, sure, and one that was full of fairy tales and superstitions, sort of this mixture of pagan and Christian gods. And of course, life really wasn't that easy. It wasn't that romantic. If you read any of the folk tales around Scotland, particularly around the Hebrides, it's like everybody dies in the sea from sea monsters or something, or monsters were stealing their children, which I always thought was about child mortality, that kind of thing. Life was very hard there, and it's not exactly easy now, especially in the rural areas, but all of these things kind of give a sense that they were very close to the land. They were very close to this sense of we are connected in some shape or form, even if that might be to bad things. So it tells a tale of people who live close to the land and for whom everything was not only sacred but alive and an active part of their lives. Now, ever since I read the Carmina Gadelica, I've been drawn to visit Scotland and the Hebridean Islands. And I went to Scotland in 2019, as many of you know, and then waiting 35 years, this summer I went to the Outer Hebrides, and I spent 10 days on the Isle of Lewis and Harris. So I wanted to give you a topographical map because one of the funny things about Lewis and Harris is that they're actually one big island, and what separates them is the mountains, not water. I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd always wondered why they were different. But this place grabbed me in a way that I honestly have never really felt before. It was a really odd thing. I've lived around the world, as many of you know. I've been to England and Italy and Australia, and I've lived in different states, from Seattle to Boston, from Nashville to Alaska to South Bend, Indiana. Never thought I'd live there. South Bend, Indiana to Orange County, California. And the thing is, I've loved things about all of these different places that I've been. They're wonderful places, right? But in the Hebrides, I found myself being connected to the land in a way that I've never felt before. It was as if as soon as I stepped on the land, I felt this sort of loving presence that was kind of like, oh, hey, love, come on, sit down with me. Let's rest a while. And it was the weirdest feeling for me. And somehow, for whatever reason, my soul, my heart is connected to Scotland and the Hebridean Islands in particular in a way that goes deeper than anything I felt before. And I won't ever live there, mind you. My twin sister would kill me. Although I do send her like, you want to retire there? I'm okay with that. But in a sense, it feels like the home of my soul. It's an odd thing. And now I'm not alone in having this sense of connection to a particular place or land. Many of you have expressed to me where you feel connected to places, right? Matter of fact, I was talking to Aaron last Sunday, and he was like, Orange County, it's a paradise. I love living here. And I know that Rob, Judy's husband, he's from the Bronx, but he loves here. He wanted to retire here. This was his place. I know that Sharon B, feels a deep connection to Africa, which she's only visited. She's never lived there, but she feels this deep, deep connection there. And while I'm happy to live here, and I'd like to visit Africa, it's just not that same sense of connection. So I want to ask you, do you have a place that you feel a deep sense of connection to? So that's our contemplation for this morning. You get the calendar standing stones to help you with this. But I want to invite you into just a moment of contemplation. Take a deep breath. And I want you to consider maybe those special places where you have been, places that have touched you in ways that maybe you didn't expect. Do you have a place that you call the home of your soul? And what would the home of your soul mean to you? When you're ready, please join Jacob and the choir in singing. So Emily Bunting, in her book called The Love of Country, she says there's this Scottish Gaelic word called Dùthchas, that it might explain the sense of connection. Don't worry about the pronunciation, it's Gaelic. What are you gonna do? Dùthchas. It's a hard word to describe because there isn't an English equivalent. But Bunting, in her book, wrote this about it. She says, how particular words describe the power of these relationships intertwined with place and community. For example, Dùthchas is sometimes translated as heritage or birthright, but conveys a much richer idea of a collective claim on the land, continually reinforced and lived out through the shared management of the land. Dùthchas grounds land rights in communal daily habits and uses of the land. It is at variance with the British concept of individual private property, and these land rights received no legal recognition and were relegated to cultural attitudes, as in many colonial contexts. Elements of Dùthchas persist in crofting communities where grazing committees of the townships still manage the rights to common land and the cutting of peat banks on the moor. Crofting has always been dependent on plentiful labor and required cooperation with neighbors for many of the routine tasks, like peasant cultures across Europe, born out of the day-to-day survival in a difficult environment. The strong connection to land and community means that people belong to places rather than places belong to people. People belong to places rather than places belong to people. It is an understanding of belonging which emphasizes relationships, of responsibilities as well as rights, and in return offers the security of a clear place in the world. And as you know, language can often convey so much. So Bunting continues about the Gaelic language, the Scottish Gaelic language. And she says, Gaelic's attentive to place is reflected in the topographical precision. It has a plentiful vocabulary to describe different forms of hill, peak, or slope, and particular words to describe each of the stages of a ridger's course from its earliest rising down to its widest point as it enters the sea. Much of the landscape is understood in anthropomorphic terms, so the names of topographical features are often the same as those for parts of the body. It draws a visceral sense of connection between sinew, muscle, bone, and the land. Gaelic poetry often attributes character and agency to landforms, so mountains might speak or be praised as if they were a chieftain. The land is recognized as alive. We get that sense of Dùthchas when you read the Carmina Gadelica, only now it's not the clan chief who's in charge, right? It's God or Mary or Son of God, that sort of thing. Or maybe even the local pagan goddess or god. Cole Gordon, who's a Scottish historian and modern crofter, he says this, that whilst the feeling of belonging to a place is a key part of Dùthchas, just as, if not more vital, are the responsibilities to that place that come with it. If we were to put this into Unitarian Universalist terms, right, what's the word that comes to mind? Think of our seventh principle. Interdependence, right? We affirm and promote, Paula's back there, I knew it. Interdependence, that web of all existence. It's that visceral feeling that not only are we connected to all that is around us, but we have a responsibility to take care of it. And what's very clear when you visit the Hebrides, when I went to the island of Lewis and Harris, is that the locals try very hard to have both a sense of that connection and responsibility. So I thought I'd show you some things that are kind of amazing about this, and one of which is Harris Tweed. Who here has heard of Harris Tweed? Most people have. This is like the champagne of tweeds. Harris Tweed is something that probably saved the islands in terms of their economy when it was started. They literally have these looms, and they had them in the black houses, and they still to this day. Harris Tweed has to actually be made on Harris. It cannot be made anywhere else in the world. And as a matter of fact, so show and tell time. I bought some. Harris Tweed is really warm, so I thought, I'll get a vest, right? I live in Orange County. I'm going to get a vest. It's still too hot. I'm like, it's a very warm tweed, but it has to have this certificate that says, and there's our inspectors that go around and make sure that the tweed is up to snuff and that it's made on Harris. But one of the things that is so amazing about Harris Tweed is how much they link it, the colors and the shapes and the weavings to the land around them. It's just beautiful. The reason why I got this color for the vest was I love the heather on the land. And this color just totally makes it. As a matter of fact, that's where they get most of their dyes, is from the land itself. One poet said, to wear Harris Tweed is to put on the planet. I love that. Now, the other one, apologies to those of you who are trying to avoid alcohol, but it's Scotland, kind of hard to avoid alcohol there. But on the Isle of Harris, they have the Isle of Harris Distillery, which started actually not too long ago, about 15 years ago. And they did it specifically to make jobs, basically, on the Isle of Harris, which is a smaller island, and not a lot of people can live there unless you're wealthy. And so they wanted to create jobs there. And the Harris gin is actually infused with what they call sugar kelp. It's kelp, people. I don't know why they call it sugar kelp. Maybe it makes it sound better or something like that. But literally, I remember seeing someone out in the island grabbing up bunches of kelp. And I said, oh, I wonder what they're doing. Why are they getting that kelp? Oh, it's probably for the distillery. They use this kelp for this gin, which is considered one of the best in the world. And if you come to my auction item, you might get a chance to taste it. So so the gin they made and they make every year. And then this year, actually, on September 22nd, they released their first whiskey, which is called Hirak. And I'm hoping to get some of that too. But the funny thing was that they released it to the community. It was a huge deal. They had parades and people coming from all over the world for it. And then they released it to the rest of the UK. And then in October, it was released to the rest of the world. So this is kind of a very exciting, big deal for them. And they did it all to help the community. So I believe the profits go to help the community. Like, nobody's getting hugely rich off of this. All right, the other thing is the way they do peat management. So peat, if you go to the Isle of Harris and Lewis, they don't have trees. Like, there's almost no trees everywhere. I mean, you will see them because people have planted them, but it's not a place where there are trees. So how do they burn stuff on fire? It's the peat. So what they do is it's literally this, sort of part of the earth that they dry out in nice big stacks that are there, and then they burn it on the fire, right? The interesting thing about peat is that it only grows 1 millimeter a year. So the people, the community who still rely on it for their fires and things like that, it's very well managed in a communal way so that they don't over abuse where the peat is. And you can see that in land. You can see little dips and things like that in the land, but you can see that they don't abuse that. They allow it to grow. The other thing I was really impressed about, that it didn't occur to me until afterwards, I was like, wait a minute, there is no trash anywhere. You can walk down the street, there's not a single cigarette butt, and this is a smoking community. You don't find those plastic water bottles strewn in the ground, in the gutter, anything like that. The beaches are pristine. The only thing I did find on the beach was stuff from nets, and let me see, where did I put it? Oh, that's right. So it's like the rope from nets, and so we would actually make it into brushes for doing our watercolor when we were there, which was kind of fun to do. That was the only thing that you could find on the beach. But other than that, they're absolutely pristine. So while you don't find trash anywhere, sheep are everywhere. Everywhere you go, they're running down the roads. They're wherever you like, and it's kind of because it's a shared communal thing, right, to have the sheep. And so you might have sheep. You see one is marked sort of a red, and another one is marked purple. Those might be two different crofters who have different sheep, but they just kind of go together, and they're out there breeding and doing their whole thing. When I do the auction thing, I'll tell you a very funny story about sheep. But they are everywhere. It's kind of an interesting thing. The other thing that happened back in 2015, I want to say, so they were going to build the super quarry on the Isle of Harris. It was back in 2004. Now, this is a mock-up of what it would have looked like. It was a rock quarry that they were going to build. And people were torn because they were like, well, we want the jobs, but then it's going to ruin our environment and the views of everything. And then other people were like, no, we're going to lose jobs. It's going to harm the fishing that we do here and everything, right? So to stop this from happening, which was a very good thing, it would hurt tourism and everything, guess what they did? They brought in a Native American. And the Native American then spoke to the people and said, yeah, you don't want this, trust me. Right?
You know what happened to me.
Yeah, you know what happened to me. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very fast thing, and they won. That quarry was never built to this day, so yay. But of course, this then begs the question, right? What happens when people lose their connection to the land, like the Native Americans? When that Dùthchas, that sense of connection, of communal living, of interconnectedness, doesn't mean anything to the colonizers, the invaders, or the profit-focused. And of course, there's so much history. It's filled with those cut off from their places of ancestry, of birth, of heritage, and of connection. The Native Americans have been shoved off of land that wasn't theirs. Or simply like the Ahashiman and Tongva in this area, they just had it simply taken away. They were never given any land back. They have a small park that they were given recently. And maybe this feeling of Dùthchas can help those of us who aren't Native American, or Ahashiman or Tongva, or any of the First Peoples, to understand what it might be like to lose that land that you're connected to, What if your place that was your soul of your home was lost? And that yearning, that strong, deep desire to heal, to go back to that land that was yours. I think about our Ukrainian refugees and how they've been forced off their land in fear. And can you imagine the pain and trauma it would be if you saw Orange County in rubble, in this church as rubble? Of course, then, there's also the Palestine-Israeli conflict. Maybe by understanding Dùthchas, we can better understand a bit what's going on in this conflict. Here we have two peoples, right, who have a deep and abiding connection to this land. And would that they could kind of understand that they each have this connection to the land. So Cianalas is another Gaelic word, and it's helpful in understanding this kind of loss. It's described as a kind of homesickness, but it's really much more than that. It's a feeling like a part of you has been severed from your soul. You know, the Caledonia song is partly about that sense of Cianalas. So how might our worldview change if we could see the land not as something that belonged to us, but rather we belong to it? And it's a tough concept to grasp, I think. So I want you to give you just a moment to think about that. What if we could see the land as not something that belonged to us, but rather we belong to it? And what might the earth ask of us? Of the Israelis and Palestinians? What if we could understand what it means to belong to the earth? Let us sing. For you. One more question. All right. How many of you grew up saying grace at the dinner table? A lot of you. How many of you still say grace? There's a lot less, we'll just say that. So rituals, right, these things like grace, are one of the ways that help us remember what is important. And if issues like the environment are important too, if issues like peace are important, or health, or love, or hope, rituals are there to help us to remember, to embody and reconstitute deep in our soul that connection to what we hold as important. This is what the Carmina Gadelica has taught me, was if you take every moment as sacred, if you take every moment as a little ritual, maybe a little prayer, a little something, a little blessing, that this helps us to remember. And I read Robin Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Again, if you haven't, please read it. It's so awesome. She wrote this. She said, "We are all bound by a covenant of reciprocity. Plant breath for animal breath, winter and summer, predator and prey, grass and fire, night and day, living and dying. Our elders say that ceremony is the way we can remember. Remember that the earth is a gift that we must pass on." And these ceremonies, these rituals are ways, as I said, for us to remember. Now, it's not like you have to say, "Bless us, O Lord, and these gifts of which we are about to receive from thy bounty," right? But what about just simply, thank you? To think for just a moment, to look at your plate and say thank you. Maybe it's to the land, to the farmers, to the cooks, to the animals. One thing that I do I try to do this fairly often, is I take a glass of water and then I mindfully spill it into the dirt and just say thank you. So it doesn't have to be about praying to a deity or receiving a blessing from above. It's about recognizing that we belong to this land and it's our responsibility to take care of it. And rituals help us to remember what is important in the world. So I encourage you to create your own rituals that help you remember what is important to you in this world. You can give thanks for sunshine, for the rain, for the bed you lie on, for the food you eat, the clothes you wear, for the friends, for this church. Create your own Carmina Gadelica. Because the idea is that every time we do these things, whether it's making coffee, or every time you get in your car, or turn off your computer at the end of a workday, if we can remember, just remember that we belong to this earth. And nobody says this better than Joy Harja.
Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life, and her mother's, and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember.
Let us sing. So Unitarian Universalist churches, you know, we come up with our own budget every year, and we pay for everything that ourselves, right? And we're just always really grateful for everybody who contributes in all of the ways that they do, whether it's time, treasure, or talent. But we like to amplify this spirit of generosity that you all give to this community with our offertory, which we share the plate with an organization that shares our values. And this month we are sharing it with Ray Elementary, which you heard a fair bit about last week, right? We're actually going to be going there November 4th and helping set up this robotics room that they have there to encourage STEM students in this wonderful little community of Ray Elementary. It's not far from here at all. It's right here in Costa Mesa. So the nice thing is that if you want to come to that, that's great. That's great. Come to that, and then we're going to have the auction afterwards. But what I want to say is all of these different ways, there are many ways that you can support. See, we are so techie here. You can be old school or you can be new school in all of the different ways. So you can go on our website. You can use an app in which to give to this, or you can actually just, you know, give it to the baskets that are here. You can write a check, whatever you'd like to do. All of that information is on our website, but any way that you can, any generosity that you have that you can give to this community and to this organization would be absolutely wonderful. So thank you for your continued generosity.
When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. And he would ruin the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now.
When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging things becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one.
When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. But now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood And saw a little red-winged bird,
shining like a burning bush.
and singing like a scriptured verse.
It made me want to bow my head. I remember when
wait, the mic. There we go. Now you can hear me. Please join us in singing We Gather Together, a song that puts our intentions into words and expresses our gratitude for the many things that we share.
So now is that time when we honor the important events and people in our lives. This is a weekly ritual of remembrance, in a sense. And you're invited, whether you remember a friend or a visitor, to participate in this ritual that we call Joys and Sorrows, and Roomers and, of course, Zoomers as well. I'd like to invite Judith Stamper up here. She's one of our pastoral care team associates, and she'll assist you in lighting candles. So if you come here today with something that has struck you at your core, that you would like to honor it by coming forward and lighting a candle, you are welcome to do so. If you would like to share it with the congregation, you can write it out loud on a slip of paper that the ushers have here, if you didn't get one when you first came in here, and simply hand it to me, and then I will read them out loud. And of course, Zoomers, you can write it in the chat, and then what we'll do is I'll read those out loud, or if you simply just want a candle lit, you can say, light a candle for me, and Judith will light that for you. So please come forward and light your candles, and then we'll read them out loud. So I'm going to read those on our Zoomers. Hiya, Zoomers. Linda C. says, please light a candle of gratitude, she said, from her and Jim for the loving support from so many of you for their granddaughter, Samantha, who's recovering from mono and plans to go back to college soon. We heard last week that they didn't know quite what was wrong with her. It turns out she has mono. Just too hard. And then Melody D says, she says, could you light a candle for a friend's husband who has swollen legs and shortness of breath, but won't go to the doctor? You all would never do that, would you? Yeah, okay. Let's see, and Peggy P. says she would like a candle of joy lit for the reminder of the wide universe that an eclipse brings us, even a partial one. She says, I observed it old school with a pinhole and a piece of cardboard onto the sidewalk. Oh, there's a nice ritual, isn't it? That's a lovely way to go. Right on. All right, both Bonnie and Julie wrote very lovely things. They lit candles of joy. Julie, Reverend Sean, for the sermons that give me things to think about. You're very welcome. And then Bonnie also said, for the very meaningful and thoughtful service today. You guys are very nice. Thank you. That's sweet of you. But we have a big birthday today as well. So our beloved Jamie P back there is turning 70. So happy birthday from all of us. And Jolyn, she says she lit a candle of joy because Chance had his first marching band field show competition last night as the electric bass in the percussion pit. They won a trophy for that. The multi-talented Chance, I love it. And then Marilyn G., she lit a candle of joy, she says, for being able to celebrate with her grandson, Darren, his 20th birthday this past week by going out to dinner together. Wow, 20, Darren is 20, that's amazing. All right, let's see here. Oh, we've got another one here that needs a candle lit from the Kilshore family is birthing with pride for an incredible opportunity for Joelle. Joelle was asked to go to Washington, D.C. to lobby for a bill under Congressman Young Kim. The lobbyists are paying for his trip and housing. Please send star travels to Joelle as this is his first trip without family. He is working in the nursery today if you want to say hello. And let's see here. Matthew says that he's finally getting some much-needed dental work done with the back tooth removed that was causing him so much pain. He says, I may look funny right now, but I'm on the road to getting my smile back. Fair enough. So Pat L., she, the candle of both joy and sorrow. She says, in regard to our Native Americans referenced in today's homily, I experienced both joy and sorrow recently watching Ken Burns' documentary called The American Buffalo on PBS. She says, I highly recommend it. And Dave Carlson, he has both a candle of concern and celebration. He says, one is the candle of concern is the rainbow and transgender sign on his son's church at Kenosha, Wisconsin, was vandalized for the second time in 6 weeks. And another candle of celebration, however, Eric, his son, used the incident as the basis for one of his best sermons ever. That's awesome. All right. And I want to say Dolly said it was a pleasure to attend the Interfaith Luncheon on Wednesday, wherein the presentation addressed homelessness and how we as church groups have the ability to alleviate the situation. Amen. So let us hold in love all the joys and celebrations, all the hurts and sadness, both spoken and silent. Let our joys remind us to be thankful. Our concerns remind us to hope, and our sorrows remind us to connect. And let all these moments remind us that we are not alone. Please join Judith in a spirit of prayer or meditation.
Our prayer today comes from the Carmina Gadalica, a mixture of Christian and pagan ideas. O God, in my deeds, in my words, in my wishes, in my reason, and in the defining of my desires, in my sleep, in my dreams, in my repose, in my thoughts, in my heart and soul always, may the Blessed Virgin Mary and the promised branch of glory dwell. Oh, in my heart and soul always, may the Blessed Virgin Mary and the fragrant branch of glory dwell. Amen.
All right, let us join together as we extinguish the flame of our chalice, and then we say together, we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So thank you all for being here this morning. We're made up of people who all think differently, right? We got all different kinds of beliefs here, and yet when we gather together, whether in the room or on Zoom, we make one beloved community. As our famous saying is, we need not think alike to love alike. Now, if you're a guest, a visitor, someone who hasn't yet been known to us, we invite you to be part of this beloved community, and we encourage you to write in the chat if you're a Zoomer, or if you're here, if you'd like to just stand for a brief moment and tell us where your name and where you're from, we'd be happy to welcome you. You know what? I'm going to bring a microphone over to you so the Zoomers can hear you too. Oh. Sorry, Kathy. I can repeat. So this is Kathy.
I actually live in San Diego with my daughter, and we usually go to the San Diego U, but we're up here for a few Sundays in a row, and
Nice.
so glad to have come across this church. It's wonderful, and thank you so much for a really wonderful sermon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. Kathy, who's visiting from San Diego, whose daughter goes to the church down there, and she's happy to be here and happy she found us. And we're happy you're here with us, too. Right on. All right, well, if anybody would like to learn more about our church, including programming for children and youth, here's a bunch of different emails up here. You know, just wanting to know more about OCUC, you can do it hello@ocuc.org. You can sign up for our weekly email called The Blast at blast@ocuc.org, and programming for children and youth at dre@ocuc.org. We want everyone to feel a part of this wonderful, beloved, loving community, so just reach out and we're happy to get you connected. All right, and then there's auctions, as I mentioned. We've got our auction time to tailgate is going to be coming up. Jolene over there in the hat. If you want to offer an auction item, like I am going to do one on the Hebrides, and we will have all sorts of yummy things to try and everything. I'll tell you all the fun tales about the Hebrides and everything like that. And I believe tonight is the deadline. Yes, for getting in your thing. So I got to do that tonight. I haven't done it yet. Yeah, we only have half of what we need. So this is always that time when we're always like, come on, we only have half of what we need. Come on, everybody. And then everybody gets it in. So do that, okay? So get that in. So I will do that as well. And I'll probably also do a sermon topic. If there's a topic that you would like, I will do that one as well. It's always kind of fun. I always get fascinating things. Maureen, I know she's on it. She wants to do another one for me. Let's see here. And then, of course, November 4th. So in the morning, come over to Ray Elementary in the robotics room setup. And then in the afternoon, come over here go home, have some lunch, and then come back here for the auction. It'll be a lot of fun. If you didn't know, the auction sets up sort of on the social calendar for the year, which is a lot of fun, and people do dinners, all sorts of really fun things. All right, so you can see all the wonderful things going up there. Now let us go out and connect with this beautiful land of which we are blessed to be a part of, and of course, let us sing.
Let us go out and all to our heart. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with the difference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out and all to our heart. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with the difference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy.
Nice. This service is over. Let our service continue.